With all the information dump about Final Fantasy X Magic the Gathering, a lot more people are playing the games themselves. A lot more people are pointing their eyes at the IP, its different iterations, and looking to play the remake or play the originals or play them in a certain order. They're exploring Final Fantasy for the first time. And with that, I think they'll come across a common theme. As you see from the title and thumbnail already, that theme is a party. That every game there exists a party, whether preset through characters you'll meet throughout the game or ones that are interchangeable throughout the others. And I wanted to see if possibly through some of these spoilers that we have so far, if we could get a return of a mechanic that didn't land so well. And I think it's especially because of how it's ruled out. Because of how it's restricted and how it was implemented, the party mechanic tends to be one that not a lot of people look too fondly at when it comes to D&D Baldur's Gate, its collaboration with Magic the Gathering. And when it comes to this mechanic, I think there's a lot of room to explore, and there are a lot of classes and different party elements that Final Fantasy can bring over. It just depends on if that's a mechanic they want to kind of set themselves to. And I wanted to go over that idea today, go over some of the cards that I think maybe could look into that, some of the different mechanics we have, and then ultimately at the end, go over some of the cards that exist currently in party and how we could maybe further adapt them and try and look to make them better. I think there's one ruling that really sets it apart, but if it was to change, it might actually make party like fundamentally like too powerful, and that's something I think worth discussing. Now, this is the central page for Final Fantasy X Magic the Gathering. I'm not collaborating with Wizards on any of this. This is just a page. Go support your local game store. Don't be buying this on Amazon if you don't have to. Right now, when it comes to these cards, one of the first cards that really comes into mind is Cloud X Soldier, having three types of being a human, soldier, and a mercenary. Now, soldier is just one of those like marquee classes in Final Fantasy outside of like maybe the mages. You could think of like summoners and dancers and dragoons, but you think of like red mage, blue mage, black mage, like white mages. Like you think of these different classes that exist universally amongst all of the Final Fantasy games. And so that's why when I see that Cloud X Soldier is a soldier, of course by name as well, but also a mercenary, which has like value as well, I tend to think of like how these different mechanics and different types will matter once we get the full deck list for a card like this, especially one with so much dang keywords. Like it's actually pretty relatively low costed. Haste, when it enters, you attach equipment to it. When it attacks, you draw cards. 7 or more, you create treasure tokens. Like this card does a lot. So I'm really looking towards some of the support that this card will get once we get that. Jumbo Cactuar is one that doesn't have to do with the party mechanic specifically, but one that has like I think a thematic purpose in terms of being like a one-off payoff. And I'm really looking for this in terms of the other party mechanics as well. Random spells that exist throughout Final Fantasy's history that might be locked through to certain classes, like only a white mage can cast this, only a black mage can cast this, but it's this big bombastic spell that's really thematic to that class, and we could maybe get it with something like Jumbo Cactuar, a card that really shows example to something where we've never had something this big. When it comes to numbers like this, you're really looking at like something that's like 15, 20 power, something like that, or it's like infinite after that. Thematically, having something be like 10,000 is a new space for a non-Acorn set. And I think this type of thematic element could really help have certain classes or certain types be able to cast certain spells. Like maybe we will get instant and sorceries that can only be cast by like convoking a wizard or convoking a soldier or something like that. That could be a different way to use the party mechanic. And so that's what Jumbo Cactuar kind of reminds me of. Now, Yuffie is a great one. I love this like kind of Final Fantasy VII callback here. But with the Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, I like the fact that this is an alternate art for it. It's not a net new card. And I simply just wanted to bring this up in the element that we are implementing what I think is a good way to use a lot of the Universes Beyond cards, which is through the original like Godzilla treatment. And I think like it's okay to have these net new cards, but also have some of these cards be recognizable, because not only is Yuriko a very infamous commander, famous in the sense of being really powerful, but just really frustrating to play against because of how good it is with commander ninjutsu, being a fundamental mistake in terms of his as design, but also just like it's a really cool, like full art, great in terms of its artistic value to a lot of people, like with the original artist and everything. I think a card like this is going to be really cool to see how it's implemented in other legendaries that we have throughout the set and potentially making them standard legal. Now, this is probably something that comes out of like a special set. This says Final Fantasy Through the Ages. So I think this is going to be like a special promo set. It's not necessarily going to be like part of the standard set, but it could be a good way to get like legendaries that we've seen all throughout Magic's history now somehow make their way into the Final Fantasy set, maybe through the mainline set, but be hidden behind the fact that they are a main character. So this could be a way to bring back party cards, party legendaries, and be centric to those. So that's what I get out of Yuriko. And then finally, Emmett Selk, I really just want to mention because his card's like insane. I think a lot of people have figured out that, I mean, like, look at the front side. So whenever it attacks a card, draw a card, discard a card. So you get a little bit of looting. It's not rummaging, which is discard then draw. This is draw then discard, which is loot. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 14 more cards in your graveyard, you may transform the Selk. And then Vigilance, Echo of the Lost. During your turn, you may play lands from your graveyard. And then if a card or a token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this is just like a Yawgmoth's Bargain or Yawgmoth's Will. I might be getting the card wrong, but the black and 2 card that allows you to play cards from your graveyard. If they would enter, you would exile them. And so this is a great way to have those shenanigans work for you in terms of the cards in your graveyard. Now, when it comes to recursion, that tended to be one thing that the party mechanic was kind of loose on. It was hard for multiple parts of the party to come back over and over again. The biggest downfall with the party mechanic was the fact that each creature could only count towards one part of that party. So if a card was a cleric and a wizard, it only counted as a cleric or a wizard towards your full party or the number of members of your party. And ultimately, if you had like a 1-mana changeling that counted as all 4, some of these cards would absolutely be busted. And I thought that's how it worked originally. I bought a bunch of them and slammed them into my my Scarecrow deck, my Reaper King Scarecrow deck. And then someone told me about the rules of this. I'm like, these cards are doo-doo caca. They're really bad. And so what I would like to see out of this set is if we do return to the party mechanic, because you require so many of them, having like better recursion for them would be really powerful. Now, Emmett Selk may not specifically point to that. It's a really powerful card. It's a wizard, notably, which is part of the party mechanic. But this is probably like, this has like a lot of people's like bells ringing in terms of like a CEDH card. I mean, it's in the right colors. It gives you Yawgmoth's thing on a stick. But there's a lot of powerful things that I think we could do with the party cards out of the graveyard if we were to better enable them. And I think like if we had the party mechanic return in some way, have cards working together, that could be a really cool way to upgrade party. Maybe it's not party, maybe it's, I don't know, the gang, like something. It is the party mechanic. If there's some way to make that return, maybe get an errata going to make these cards better. Erratas are a little bit unpopular, but we'll see. Maybe there's a way to make that ruling better. Ultimately, just pointing out the fact that, again, the term party refers to the collection of characters under that player's control in the Final Fantasy series. Parties thus decide who the players take into battle and make pivotal decisions in the battle system. Most games also have a party leader, usually the main protagonist, who must be present at the party at all times except for under certain conditions. This party leader is usually the character that appears on the world map and locations. So maybe there's a way for if you have like a certain member of like the team out, like your other wizards and clerics get buffs as well. Like maybe we have like a legendary main character that comes out and it says your party characters can now count towards 2 when it counts to counting like a party or something like that. Like that could be a really cool introduction to that. And that's something I wanted to point out with this specific description in the game. We have a lot of our regular Final Fantasy protagonists coming out in this game. So if we had some type of support for the party mechanic, it could come out in that aspect in a way to have it count towards multiple, provide boost, tutor for more, look for more of these parties and just have them, and maybe just turn one of your characters non-party into a party member and have it count towards that. So I think party is something that we could definitely explore. Now, hopping into the next section of the video, I want to go over the current party mechanic cards and what I believe are to be the top 5. Now, it's all very like contextual. The problem is like this card is the mechanic, I should say, is very contained. you have to be playing into like party mechanics to take advantage of all this. So take this with a grain of salt. It's not like these cards are like universally good. They're good kind of as party cards, which is why I wanted to like point them out. And so with that, I want to go to number 5. That's going to be Solemn Doom Guide. Black, and 3 for a creature, Tiefling Cleric. Flying, each creature in your graveyard that's a cleric, rogue, warrior, and or wizard has unearthed. So I was talking about recursion. A lot of times these do have to have multiple members of your party out. And so having recursion for these is really powerful. Having them have unearth is really powerful. The problem is that unearth is like a temporary thing. They gain haste, they leave the battlefield after that, and they're like exiled at the beginning of the next end step. You can only unearth as a sorcery as well, so you can't like go to your end step and then, you know, unearth things back. But Solemn Doom Guide is a cool one for that aspect, in having to make sure that you have multiple party members out. Spoils of Adventure is a great payoff. This is like one of the first cards I automatically included until I learned the rules as to how, your party consists of up to 1. So this costs 1 less for each creature in your party. It's an instant for 4 white and blue. You gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. So in my mind, if I had a Changeling out, I thought this counted as 2 mana, gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. Busted. Absolutely insane. This is an auto include in so many decks, but that's not how it works. And so I'm hoping that maybe a card like Spoils of Adventure through the Final Fantasy set can be better utilized with something like this. There's so many better draw engines. The 3 life is almost like nothing. You're really playing this for the draw 3 cards. You want to make sure that if you're in a situation where you have a full party, you're able to gain more resources and continue the train going. The problem is like you don't gain like extra reduction either. Like a party can only have like, there's only 4 types in that party. Again, Final Fantasy has multiple different types and even subclasses as well. So it's just like, is there a way to pay off all of that as well and maybe make something reduce even more? Like this card reduces like could we just have, you know, cards that like reduce fully for the number of wizards that you have, the number of clerics that you have? Like that could be soft kind of support for party as well, just different typal strategies that then help party ultimately. Coveted Prize is a nice little tutor, black and 4 for a sorcery. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party, and so it could cost 1 black. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So really powerful. You can tutor for a lot of game-winning pieces in this case. Again, it's just one of those things where I instantly included it. I thought like a Changeling would make this cost 1. I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, what is Wizards doing? This has to be like a $50 card or something. No, unfortunately, I think like this is one of those highlighting things about how they were too ambitious with the party mechanic in terms of how they implemented it as well. It's too fixed. And I think the restriction on it, having a creature only count as 1, was what really held it back. I think a lot of these spells, you could have made them cost like a lot more and not have had that restriction, which is, I think, like something that we could do towards like later down the line. Like if we were to errata this or make some type of change or make an upgraded version of this, I think something like that would be a lot better. Tazri Beacon of Unity is the next card I think is really great. This isn't necessarily the Tazri that everyone thinks about, but it's white and 4. Tazri Beacon of Unity is a legendary creature, human warrior. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. So if you have a full party, 4 creatures out, it's a 1 mana 4/6. Then as a commander, it's a 5-color commander. So you can pay 8 mana, 2/2/2, or 1 of each color, except for white. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard, and or ally cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. So potentially, if you have a library full of different cards that are cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard, and or allies, you could just be paying 4 mana, 1 of each color, and adding 6 cards to your hand. Could be really powerful, right? Like, so it's real up to 2. Oh no, it's got to be 2, isn't it? It's got to be 2. Actually, this is another commander that I got completely wrong as well. No, it's, you got to reveal up to 2. See, this is what I mean. It's so fixed. It's so bad. Like, why couldn't we get 6 cards with this? Why couldn't we potentially just be adding 6 cards with this? Because another synergy we have is like, you can make your creatures, you don't just have to play those party mechanics. You could play the Changeling artifact that makes it so all your creatures are like a certain type, or like they're all types or whatever. They all have Changeling. And so you could then make it so all your creatures are hits when you talk about a card like Tazri. But like playing 4 mana, look at the top 6, you reveal up to 2. this could be doing a lot more. I think the problem, again, it's too fixed. It's too many problems with this. And I think ultimately the best party card has to be Nalia Dearnis, which is a legendary creature human rogue, Orzhov, black white 1 for a 3/3. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard spell from the top of your library, not at any time, but at its regular casting restriction. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain death touch. So it makes it really hard for your opponents to block them. You get a universal just buff across the board, a permanent buff, which is really powerful. And this card itself will count towards one of those types at least. So it's the rogue type. You are incentivized to play less rogues in your deck, more of the other types to have that commander out and kind of add to your party there. Again, this is probably the best one just because you get that free value, you get that extension of your hand off the top of your deck. It doesn't allow you to play like lands or stuff, but you get the creatures out of it, which is really powerful. Unfortunately, the cards here just aren't that great. So I'm looking for Final Fantasy to add a boost to something like this, with party being such a central mechanic to the games and the way, certain party buffs work and the way certain spells work in the games. I'm really excited for a potential return to this, a second iteration, better version of this card, and a potential errata to make some of these older versions of these cards like much better. Because let's be honest, the party mechanic kind of sucks. It was poorly implemented. They did it in such a fixed way that I think if they just made the spells cost different or they had more restrictions, they could have made the spell work in such a way where like you could have cards count as multiple and it would be perfectly fine. Again, they just made it too fixed. That's ultimately the downside of it. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you want the party mechanic to return? Are you excited for different aspects of the Final Fantasy kind of collaboration coming down the line? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.